the candidates for St. Charles Ward 3 for the April 1st consolidated election. Another one of our candidate forums. We hope to ask get their opinion on some issues and see where they stand on others. We'll start with Paul. Why don't you give us an intro? Tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're running.
Hi, my name is Paul Lencioni. I am the current alderman for one of the two third ward aldermen. Grew up in St. Charles. My family owned a business here for just under 100 years, and a degree professional accountant. Started my career in public accounting, and with that, I've brought my career back and forth between St. Charles and billion-dollar companies. I actually, to come back and run my family's business, Blue Goose Market, I left an executive position running strategy for about $1.5 billion of sales for E.B. Brown, which was the third largest distributor in the convenience industry at the time. But when you're, as you're working through your life, getting married, I have a daughter who just turned 16. Rain, I love you, who's just started playing soccer. The soccer season started. Well, we've been playing for a long time in our lives, but soccer season in North just started. You just make decisions about what you're about. And for me, I realized I've had this amazing ability to see what we have in a hometown in St. Charles. And I decided with everything, and my daughter is 3, I'm flying all over the eastern half of the United States, and my family's business was not doing well, and it wasn't the most profitable thing that I could do, but I decided that I'm going to make my efforts local. I'm gonna work. I'm going to work from my home because we're lucky we have this amazing home, and I know how amazing it is. So came back, it didn't work out, but I was able to, although business was too far gone, trying to save the generation that was running it before me, I was able to work really hard to get a sale with Whole Foods, which is the best thing that could have happened. Hard transaction, wasn't super profitable for my family, but it was the best thing for St. Charles. But with that, running for alderman, I've just had the opportunity to see, I've served I was the vice chair of the plan commission. I was on the executive board of the downtown partnership that I helped transition into the business alliance. I've been I've been a township trustee. I've been familiar with and working in, politics and just helping community since I was in college. So I just wanted to give everything that I could to use my skill set and my understanding and my experience to help our community, to progress while still staying awesome and being this great local community that as we transition into kind of local regional. And with that, just, I've recruited, great people and helped them, transition into, helping in public. The 2 people that I'm running against are, good folks who I've, either known or gotten to be good friends with. Those are the things that inspire me. It's my drive to help people reach better heights, build consensus, use my background to help see the difference between things that sound like good ideas and actually are good ideas, and then, build consensus around those and then support those. When I hear, ideas that ring as what we really need to do, it's just, that's what I'm about. I guess it's just raised as a retailer, and it's always about your community, and, you're only as good as the people you serve. And so I hope to be the best that I can be. And I'm really lucky that I live in an amazing place like St. Charles. And I want to continue the very good work that I've started and will continue no matter what happens in this election.
Great. Thank you, Paul. Vicki, want to tell us a little about yourself and why you're running?
Sure. And thank you both. Thank you, Shaw Media, for having this meeting for us and getting the word out to the community about the candidates. My name is Vicki Spellman, and I'm running for City Council in St. Charles in the 3rd Ward. I've lived in St. Charles for 17 years, along with my husband, Ed, of about 30 years. We have 3 kids, all in their 20s now. I don't know how they got so old when I'm obviously so young. Anyway, we could have lived anywhere in the Chicago suburbs. We both grew up in Arlington Heights, and then we first lived in Naperville when we got married, which are both fine communities. But we chose St. Charles because of all the things that make it special. The beautiful downtown, the biking and hiking trails, the parks, the school system, the proximity to the train, and we've loved it here. It's been a great place to raise a family. I graduated from Northwestern University, where I studied history, and I currently serve on the St. Charles Liquor Commission, where I've gotten to know and work with the mayor and several city council members, as well as city staff, including the police chief and the deputy police chief. I was VP of the PTO in my former community and have had various volunteer and community service roles. Right now, I am Executive Vice President at my advertising agency. It's one of the largest in the world. I manage a large team and manage multi-million-dollar budgets. I'm responsible for creating consensus on projects with a very diverse array of agency folks, which include creative people, strategic planners, analysts, project managers, digital gurus, and many others. And we have to come together to get projects done, very diverse arrays of opinions. And I'm kind of in client service in the middle of making sure that we come together to solve problems in the best way possible. And I think this skill could be a great asset for City Council. My 30 years in client service has also taught me about how to be very responsive to clients, getting back to them quickly and solving their problems or figuring out who can. No phone call or message ever goes unanswered, or I would not be successful. Other values that are important to me are transparency and fiscal responsibility, which is going to be a very important theme in the coming years for City Council. Key issues for me in the city are supporting mental health services, sustainability, expanding our bikeability and walkability, and maybe connecting some of those great trails together that we have, and bringing thoughtful development to St. Charles with some of the very many building projects that will be decided in the coming years, like the mall and others. I want to use my experience to serve my community now, not just my clients. And I promise that no one will bring more energy or passion into this role than I will. Thank you.
Thank you, Vicki. Carolyn, same question. You want to tell us a little about yourself and why you're running?
Yep, thank you. Thank you, Kevin and David and the Chronicle for having us, and to my colleagues running in the race today. Nice to see you. My name is Carolyn Waibel. I am a candidate for the 3rd Ward here in St. Charles. My personal history is that I was raised in St. Charles since 1978. Wasn't born, but pretty close. And so my family was here. There was 4 girls here with my parents. And so we were here from 78. And then I did move out of the area shortly and came back in 2009 to raise my son, who's now finishing his year of school in geology anthropology. So St. Charles is our home. We look at it as our home base and somewhere where we've, had multiple 3 generations of our family and community. I spoke the other day when we were talking about the dam that the river is literally one of the veins that runs through our multiple generations of our family of fishermen. So I don't say that lightly. It's a very true statement. So my background is I graduated from University of Illinois in business communications. I did do about 20 plus years in corporate and Fortune companies where I was upper level management and sales and marketing. So I acquired skills in finance and people skills. And I brought all those skills and when I had to shift gears and prioritize some other issues. And so when I was in St. Charles, I prioritized my family, and I also did volunteer work for 15 years. So during that time, I was in PTO. I then, graduated into the scene of politics, and I've done 10 years on the city commissions. I did 10 years on the mental health board. We restructured that whole entity. I was on the youth commission. I was on the housing commission. We restructured that entity as well into what it is today as a housing trust. I also ran for 2 terms in 17 and 21 for the St. Charles School Board and served on that as well. That was also during a very trying time with COVID. So that's an experience in its own, which I won't expand on today too much. And then I did work with the county as well. We created a behavioral board. We created the opioid board, a vape task force, and some other projects that helped our local community and my town that I love in St. Charles. Why I'm running for alderman. So after all that, and I also sat on some senatorial and representative committees in the area. The last 2 years I've been out of politics. I took a little break, and I got a nod from some of our very astute businesses and some of our 3rd Ward residents, where they felt like there was a need for transparency and intergovernmental support, as well as support of our own representation for our citizens and infrastructure and as a fiduciary. So I did get the tap on the shoulder, would I be interested? And so I felt that compelling altruistic voice to come and serve the community and help represent the third in a bit more representative role that they had, to make sure that their voices are heard, both as small businesses and as individuals, for what we need. The infrastructure in the third ward is definitely a challenge we have coming forward. So here I am running for alderman.
All right. Thank you very much.
Mhm.
So first question, Vicki, this will be yours first, and then Carolyn and then Paul. What one thing would you need to accomplish in the next 4 years to consider your term a success? Oh, you're
So
muted.
you're Vicki.
Didn't you know, still forgetting to come off mute. Thank you. I think the thing that I would most love to see happen is to finally have development started on the Charlestown Mall. If it's a question that you're going to have later in the conversation, let me know and I can choose something else, but I could tell you about my thoughts there. Shall I?
It is not on our list
It-
for later on. So yeah, expand.
Sorry, it is on the list?
It is not.
Oh,
We
great.
don't have
Okay, great. Sorry. Yeah, so that's been sitting completely vacant for about 7 years, and it's been getting more and more empty for many years after that. And it is one of the things that the community members talk the most about. And I think the reason why it's been hard to move that forward is that it's going to cost at least $45 million to raise the land there, and another, I think, $39 million to put in the sewer trunk line that's needed to serve a big new development there. And that's before you even start building on it. So especially in the current economy, that is a tough math problem for the current owner or developer. So I mean, that's the ideal vision, and I would use my advertising skills to hopefully put more pressure on the owner and and help to promote St. Charles more to potential developers that could do something with the space. But while we're doing that, I would love to think about some creative solutions for the current space. It is in very good repair. It has been kept up. And there's no reason why we couldn't be using that space and potentially generating more tax revenues from that space. For example, we could turn it into a hotel possibly, which is a priority for the city, or a community college extension, or attainable affordable housing, which is also a priority, I think, for the city. It could become a food hall. It could become a TV or film production studio, pop-up shops to help incubate businesses. There are a lot of things we could do with that space that I think would be great, that I just haven't had the city talking about so far as an interim solution to make that a more vibrant place in our community. So if something could finally start moving there, I think that would be great.
Great, thank you. Carolyn, same question. What would you like to accomplish in the next 4 years to consider your term a success?
Right. Thank you, Kevin. I just want to expand a little bit and say that I am honored to be here to try to represent the ward and represent the city in itself. Building on what Vicki said, I think it's important not only do we develop the land where the mall was, but that we try to take the weight of that commercial tax burden that we're missing off of our current taxpayers. So by the current administration saying no to several offers or not being able to close a deal on several opportunities that we've had for that mall space, it has continued tax burden on the residents because we're missing all that commercial tax income that we could have that was on the east side. That being said, in our ward in particular, because we're on the west side of 15th and west of Randall, the one thing that the residents came to me about was the infrastructure problem of both not only the water but sewer. Our water lines on the west side, we've had problems with brown water, and there are 7 different water stations across the whole city, and they are doing improvements on the water lines. But the last 3 councils have voted no to a long-term water solution. And now the council members are talking about the fact that we can't kick the can down the road again. And I do appreciate that transparency now, but we've had opportunity to fix it in the past and we haven't. And now as an election year, I think it's interesting that everyone's talking about it, but it's something that we have to do. So when I get voted into office, there is absolutely no doubt that this would be a priority for me to make sure that we have a long-term strategy for the infrastructure improvement that we need in the city. The immediate infrastructure would be one section, and then the long term for the rest of the city. And so this side of town needs potable water. So
Thank you. And Paul, same question. What one thing you need to accomplish in the next 4 years to consider your term a success?
Um, well, I don't think that there's one thing that's possible, but I'll tell you what I think the most important thing going forward, something we've never had, and I've been working to move our city government to it, is finance committee meetings at least quarterly. For before I got on city council, we borrowed $1 million a year for 10 years just to operate, for the general fund, to operate as a city. Our debt was moving out of control. The aldermen that were in place weren't paying attention to how our finances were working. We were bonding for things that were well under our de minimis. That's all changed, and I've had a great impact on that from being a part of hiring our new director of finance, who's doing a great job, to putting severe pressure to make sure that we're reducing debt, that we're taking care of our pension burdens, and make sure that we're a great place to do business. Because you talk about, and I'm going to say, as the current alderman, careful when you start looking for a new coach. You better be able to find a better coach than the one you want to fire. With the mall property, we voted against the proposal that was put in place because it was a bad plan. And, from the outside, you're like, you want things, but you don't know what's possible. And I think it's interesting when you see aldermen who are saying that they can obviously do a better job than, Ryan Bongard, who's in the ward, than Jamie Munns, than Ray Rogina. These are talented people that have been working on this. To just make a promise that you can do it, it's different than that. And that's what comes with being this environment, working in it, and understanding what's happening, because it's privately owned, and government, we are there to be good shepherds, but we are not there to be the sheep. I mean, it's a privately owned property that we ensure is well kept up, but that we're doing everything that we can to make sure that we address it. But with the financial pressure, we're working on infrastructure, and on the west side, the outskirts of town, there are always challenges there, but we've done a great job while paying down our debt, upgrading infrastructure, and the west side neighborhoods have potable water. We have good drinking water. I mean, we're not Flint, Michigan, but I think making sure that you message positively, that you're a very positive person, that throw the biggest party that you can, invite everybody, and help them do what they can to keep our city moving forward and make it better than it already is, because it is pretty phenomenal. But making sure we have our eye on finances and we know how to manage ourselves fiscally in a fiscally responsible and positive manner going forward when we have a lot of financial challenges, in the future, because we keep getting all these state mandates that are completely unfunded, that puts more and more burden on our citizens. And it's going to take serious know-how to make sure that, because if there's one thing that will degrade our city, it is not having our finances in order.
May I respond to that, or are we not doing it that way?
We haven't been doing it that way.
Okay.
Everybody gets to turn and we can just go on, just make sure,
Okay.
mostly for time's sake. Because
you'll find a spot. Work it back in. I'd love to hear the response.
Thanks, Paul.
All right, then moving forward, next question is about energy contracts. I know the IMEA deal is a hot button topic right now. They're looking for the city to make a commitment on a contract that doesn't expire for another decade or so. In your opinion, what are the most important qualities that the city's energy provider should have? And do you think that reflects the interests of residents? And we're going to be starting with you, Carolyn, on this.
Right. So I've been going to all the Bright Energy meetings about the IMEA contract. And so what's interesting about what I'm hearing from the community is that it seems like their concerns and what they brought up as issues is not necessarily fitting with what some of our aldermen are hearing. So one of the things that we've talked about at the IMEA, the Bright Energy meetings, is the fact that there are alternative companies out to IMEA. So first of all, we don't need to be in a rush to sign the IMEA contract at all. We have 10 years. No one has ever done an RFP, meaning that we've not got other proposals for contracts. There are other companies out there. I sat at a third ward alderman meeting by our 2 aldermen and was told by the alderman that there is no other companies out there that exist like that. That is actually a false statement. There are companies out there. There was over 40 examples.
You're talking about
that
what I said, though.
Paul, hang on, I'm in the middle of a statement here. There was over 40 examples that the Bright Energy company gave us. And so what is confusing to me is, why is there such a disconnect on the information when you have people doing research who aren't not our actual staff, who can find companies out there. The other thing is, we have Naperville out there doing a consultant analysis on IMEA and what they're bringing to the table. There's no reason for us to hurry on a 3-month vote, which is what one of our aldermen said also. And I'm trying not to point to which one, so try not to take it personally, Paul. It may or may not be you who said this, but we shouldn't be voting on something within the next 3 or 6 months when we have a colleague in the, I guess, fight with us for energy that's doing an analysis that's not going to be ready in 3 or 6 months. So there's absolutely no reason I feel like we should, jump on this this vote right away. The other thing about voting is that, we have a very unique position here in the 3rd ward. For the first 2 years that one of the aldermen was in place, they could not vote on 60% of our voting. There was a conflict. Now that everyone has no conflict, that's great, but you also have to be in attendance to vote. So you can't get a vote, you can't get a representation from your council people if they're not present. So that needs to be a priority for whoever's running.
Thank you, Carolyn. And just a reminder, we're not going to be responding to other candidates' things in order. Paul, you're going to be able to speak last in this one anyway, but we're going to keep the order that we're going in, just for fairness sake. All right. So Vicki, this same question to you. I'll repeat it for you. What are the most important qualities that the city's energy provider should have? And do you think that reflects the interests of residents?
The most important qualities that an energy provider should have include reliability of power, low costs, consistent costs that don't fluctuate every month or every year. Based on renewable sources, we are hearing from the community that they don't want to be contributing to pollution to the degree that IMEA currently is, and confidence that the provider will do what they say they're going to do. All providers, including IMEA, need to become more sustainable over time by state law. IMEA is scheduled to be shut down by state law in, I believe, 2035. So they do all have to get there eventually, but it's the degree to which we can count on them to do so if we continue to contract with them. The Naperville study that I think Carolyn referred to became available day before yesterday. And it's just the top line. There'll be another one on April the 8th that's more detailed, but it provides a lot of different options. So I think there's a number of things that the city of St. Charles should do. I agree with Carolyn, and I suspect, Paul, I think we've already all said the same thing, that we do not support extending the contract for another 20 years, 10 years early. Let's take our time and make sure we're doing it right. We should issue RFPs and get other bids. I don't think the Naperville consultant, we can just directly lift and shift their recommendations over to St. Charles because they are accustomed to Naperville. There's a lot of great information, but I think hiring a consultant to customize recommendations for us, taking what Naperville has done and building on it, hopefully for an affordable consulting fee, could be really helpful for us to figure out what our best options are. I also think we need to really educate the citizens of St. Charles. There's a small group that is very involved in this issue and very aware, but I think the majority of citizens aren't aware that we get 80% of our power from the #1 polluter in the entire state of Illinois and the top 12 polluter in the entire United States. St. Charles residents just don't know that, and I don't think they'd love to hear about that. Nobody is in favor of pollution. Like, everybody would want to not be part of polluting, but how we can get there without dramatically increasing fees for residents is what we all need to figure out together. I'd love to put information in the monthly utility bill and just say, kind of like we do when there's a referendum, here are the issues, let's have a public education forum or even a public workshop, because there's a lot of complexity to the issues and the options. So I'd love to get everyone together, all the interested citizens, and help people understand the issues. And then it's up to them if they want to prioritize sustainability or low costs. And we need to work through that. I hope that whatever direction we go, that St. Charles will take a stand against continuing to pollute to the degree that we're contributing to right now. But we need to find a way that doesn't dramatically increase utility rates for our citizens. So I'm sure there's a way forward. Many experts are saying that sustainable energy is less expensive than coal. So I would love to look into an option like that. But there's a lot to figure out.
Thank you, Vicki. Paul, to you. Same
You know
question.
what, Vicky's absolutely like on the right track for sure. I mean, we need to find our best path forward to provide reliable, affordable, consistent, and as socially responsible an energy source as possible. That's a heck of a challenge. You know, I think a lot of the questions about renewing our contract with IMEA early, and IMEA, you got to understand, it's Prairie State Coal that that IMEA owns a portion of. That no matter what happens with that, we're going to be on the hook for. That they get, you know, an overwhelming majority of their electricity from, but it's actually they get less of a percentage of their energy from coal than Exelon does. It's a really complicated issue, and we absolutely need help to do this. But when you also take a look at renewing the contract early, which we shouldn't do before we're ready to make a decision, but as we want to work towards better, cheaper, more consistent renewable energy with the right battery setups that actually make it possible, rather than, something that you say, I want renewable energy, you contract, like right now, there are a lot of questions. You just can't be on 100% renewable energy, as much as you want to, you'd like to go in that direction. But even IMEA, one of the reasons they're asking for renewals early is so they can have those contracts in place, so they can afford to fund creation and exploration for more renewable energy sources. IMEA just put a solar farm in St. Charles that is actually providing power onto the grid. And it's IMEA is not a company. They're a not-for-profit co-op that we're a member of and we sit on the board of. So if IMEA is not doing a better job, that means we're not doing a better job. So that's one part of the consideration. Just to address, Bob Gibb and I host a Third Ward Aldermanic quarterly, town hall. There are a lot of companies out there that provide renewable energy in a lot of different ways, but you can't just pick any of them. Some of them are not. They're not long-term contracts. They're brokering. That's not the right situation. We also have an electrical plant that requires that we have the ability to continue to either manage our electrical utility within St. Charles or sell it to a company that is going to then manage it. I mean, there's monstrous configuration that goes with this. I mean, you're talking about, like a large chunk of $1 billion in revenue. To say that it is an easy situation, that's not quite right. We need to do pro formas. We need to understand what is possible and what's out there. We need to have industry professionals and prepare that for us so we can make a judgment. And I'm absolutely not voting on this contract, and I wouldn't consider it until we have all of the due diligence necessary to understand that we're going in the right direction. Absolutely done. But it is a really complex consideration that we're going to have to spend the right amount of time and get the right amount of help to make it happen in the right way. And so we can provide good energy. I mean, if we don't have the right energy in St. Charles, I mean, you're talking about commerce suffering. You're talking about, way of life not working appropriately, overburdening the future generations of taxpayers. It's incredibly complex. And we're talking, no matter who we go with, it's going to be long-term contracts. In fact, if you don't have your direction put in place within at least absolute, last chance, otherwise you probably won't be able to serve. It's like 5 years. It's just a huge undertaking. So it's simple to say that we want green energy, but to go and put that proposal together, it's a monumental feat for a small city like St. Charles, and we have to be considerate of that. Now, I think that there are great options out there, and we need smart people to help us find those, and that's where we're at right now. So I'm glad that having Naperville study, we were waiting to see the knowledge that they have gained through that and evaluate our next steps based on that. But we're taking a measured approach, and there's absolutely no way we should be voting on this until we do appropriate due diligence and realize, exactly what our future can look like. It's a tough question, and we'll do the work to go forward.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you. Next question is another hotly discussed topic in town. Paul, you'll go first on this one. What role does the dam play in the future of St. Charles?
The dam should stay where it's at. Our dam it's low cost of ownership. It's in very good health. The pool of water created north of the dam is incredibly unique in northern Illinois, not just to St. Charles. The water quality is better than it's been in absolute decades. There are multiple professional opinions about the best way to improve, oxygen content within the water. If you were to take the dam out, you shrink the biosphere, you destroy habitats, but you also, you take a look at the amount of people who live on the river, you're taking a look at what are their property values, what does the legal environment after that look like, and all of this, to what improvement? The improvement is, arguments that taking out the dam are incredibly specious. You can't be confident on them. Right now, nothing's broken. Now, we should keep the dam. Now, in the 90s, the IDNR was looking to accumulate dams to help manage them. The IDNR no longer wants to own dams. So you have the Army Corps of Engineers study, which said that there was an ecological reason to take out the dam, which then gained access to federal funds. It's questionable where the situation of those federal funds, but at the same time, not completely connected with that, you have the IDNR saying, we're not interested in owning this dam, and either you need to tell us that you don't want to take it out, but left to our own devices, we're going to take it out because we don't own dams anymore. So those are two separate pieces that need to be figured out. But what is provided in the environment of St. Charles by that pool of water is it's just such a part of our community, essential part, from people living on the water to habitats to, this incredibly unique asset in the community and in this region. When the cost of ownership is negligible, and everything that's contributed is so incredibly valuable and such a huge contributor to both our heritage and, our amazing environment. Absolutely not. This one's an easy one for me. And in fact, I've been trying to implore the rest of the current city council to take a stand on this one. Go ahead and say it's an easy one. It should be an easy one. Like we need to keep the dam. Other communities have said, it adds too much. It's too valuable of an asset. The way the river operates is too valuable to the community. We should be standing up, all of our leadership, and saying the same thing. And I'm saying it very loudly right now.
Thank you. Vicki, same question. What role does the dam play in the future of St. Charles?
I think the dam is going to be here in the future of St. Charles. I do think it should stay also, and it's a really important issue to the residents of the Third Ward. There are many homeowners that are up along the river, and their property values could be severely affected. The Army Corps of Engineers report, which was done 10 or 20 is a long time ago, only took environmental and some safety concerns into consideration with its recommendation to remove the dams along this part of the Fox River. It did not take in economic or private property or recreational factors into consideration, and it should have, and it acknowledges that, and that's why it's redoing the report. In fact, now it has said that the Army Corps said that it wishes it would have maybe carved out St. Charles because it's kind of unique among the other communities along the river for having those factors affected by the removal of the dam, unlike in Carpentersville, which is taking out the dam now and didn't have those same impacts. So I think that, there's too many other important issues that would be affected by removal. Now, I will say that there will come one day when the dam needs repairs. And if in fact St. Charles is the owner of the dam at that time, which it is not right now, it is the IDNR. But if they do give us the dam, if important or significant capital improvements are required, I would be open to proposals that create a third way between removing and keeping. A creative solution that could be shoring up the shoreline so that it retain, the requirement is retaining the water levels in the downtown area, and wherever there is private property, those water levels can't change. But if we could put something in that would allow passage through the river and improve wildlife without affecting those recreational private property and business concerns. There's been a whitewater rafting proposal, I wouldn't spend $2.5 million, which is what it would cost right now to tear down the dam that's working perfectly well. But I do think that when repairs are needed, when the time comes where we do have to make a decision like that, and we have to, not just because of an IDNR ownership change, that we might want to consider proposals like that as long as they don't affect those factors I mentioned.
Thank you. And Carolyn, same question.
I almost forgot to unmic. I think we're all in agreement on this point. The dam would be a very prominent part of my future of St. Charles when I become alderman. It is just a staple of St. Charles and that river. I think, again, very similar to my colleagues of candidates here. If there needs to be safety improvements, I think that would be important. I think I would like to pursue grants for that. I know that they would be available hopefully via the state, if not federal. I would like to enhance the shores of the river. The city has let some of the sidewalks go, and I think some of that walkability on the river shoreline needs to improve so we can keep that walkability and bikeability for our citizens, and they're enjoying the St. Charles and the river for what it is. And then I would just say if there's any ecological support that says that we need to either improve or adapt any parts of the dam for the fish or any of the wildlife, I would support that. I mean, as I mentioned in the very beginning, ironically, we've been fishing the rivers for a long time, since we were here in '78. So we enjoy the river ourselves. We know that the river has improved over the last 50 years. I know Paul will probably giggle with me on this one because he's been here this long, but when you used to fish the river in the '70s, you used to come across some very unique, potentially two-headed or four-eyed fish that came down from some of the chemicals in Elgin. And so the improvement of the quality of the water has been really a beautiful attempt by all the Fox River communities to clean up the quality of the river, the water of the river. So I would hate to see us do anything that would change what we have going on with the Fox River. So.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So this next one is going to start with you, Vicki. In 10 years, where do you expect to see the most change in Ward 3, and what will that look like?
The most change in Ward 3. I'm not sure that Ward 3 will be extremely different than the rest of St. Charles. I think we'll have a different energy supplier. I think we'll have some incredible development in the city, like the mall, once again, like the police station. And in Pheasant Run, I think we'll get building up there. We might expand our western border with some new development. And hopefully we'll continue to have a high occupancy rate in downtown St. Charles. And I would love to see us in particular, and maybe this could be unique to Ward 3, is bringing in some younger families and some single people so that we can keep bringing in a dynamic population into the city. Right now, I have 3 kids in their 20s, and 2 of the 3 had a very hard time moving out, and 1 is still working on it. And they can't find apartments that they can afford in St. Charles. And one of them works in downtown St. Charles at ALE Solutions, and he had such a hard time finding an affordable place. So I would love it if we could, as new development comes in, close the loophole that is currently allowing builders to not provide affordable housing when they make new developments. And yeah, maybe we could contribute to that in Ward 3, where we have mostly homes, and get some younger families in here because they are the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Carolyn, same question. How will Ward 3 change, and what will that look like?
All right. I'm going to go a little bit of a different direction. First of all, I want to go back to.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh.
I'm on the edge of my seat. Oh no.
Shoot.
I can text her that she's frozen if she doesn't know.
That'd be great.
Sure. Oh, no.
Are we good?
You there?
you're
No,
back.
you froze. Are you
Oh, yeah.
back?
Yep. Is everyone here?
Yes.
Okay. The point I really want to talk about is about diversity. So a little bit what Vicki was talking about, but really about the diversity of our members in Ward 3. So right now in Ward 3, we have single family homes and we have a lot of apartments. So I'd like to see some more in kind of interweaving of that diversity of citizenry in Ward 3. One of the things we did was a voter registration for our apartment complexes in Ward 3 during my campaign here. And I think it helped feel them seen, but I like to see some integration of the diversity of the housing in Ward 3. There is a point that there is I think, a gap in housing for affordable single-family housing, but we do have affordable multi-unit housing, but I don't think that we interweave them into the workings as much in St. Charles. So I think it would be important in 10 years to see that these people feel more integrated into the city. They're sitting on boards of the city, or we're doing events in their neighborhood. And so I'd like to see that in the next 10 years as more continuity for the different citizen levels in our city. There's apartments on 15th, there's apartments off of Oak and 19th. And then it also goes into Ward 5. So, I mean, I think that's something that maybe we forget about as aldermen, is including our multi-unit housing.
Thank you.
Sorry,
And Paul?
the break kind of threw me off a little bit.
Oh, that's all right. Paul, same question. 10 years, where do you see most change in Ward 3, and what does it look like?
Well, let's talk about goals. Ward 3, we have an interesting blend and a mix, because we do have, you know, a chunk of multifamily units, and then we have, you know, estate homes. It's an interesting swath across the city. I think as we're more distributed workforce, hopefully we are able to find and capture more opportunity for professional development in St. Charles. That's focusing on and finding businesses to move operations out this way. You know, put offices where people are. One of the reasons we don't have young residents in St. Charles is because we don't have entry-level professional jobs. Vicki mentioned her son works for ALE, if I got that right. It's one of the only large employers of entry-level professionals. You know, we need to do what we can to attract more professional jobs. You know, with distributed workforces and hybrid situations, you actually can, you know, start work for a Price Waterhouse, a Leo Burnett, and not have to travel into the loop as much. So we need to continue to work on becoming a regional city and a regional hub of commerce, and that makes all those opportunities work better. It's the best way to, you know, drive, you know, younger families into St. Charles. And with the affordable housing, it's a great effort, but a lot of the people building in St. Charles, affordable housing isn't just housing that's affordable. It's actually it's managed, required affordability components that are managed by government and not-for-profit sectors. And it just takes a lot for the developers to do it. We've been working our tail off to get them to build it, and it's just really hard. I mean, it's just everything that we do, they literally are doing just about anything not to build it. We're looking for good ways to do that. But if we drive, somebody, you know, very smart person in Silicon Valley said, if you tell me what the incentive structure looks like, I can tell you what's going to happen. If we are able to continue to drive, you know, jobs, great entry level professional jobs into St. Charles, you will get professional, you know, people who are looking for more housing at that entry level, and you will have builders that continue to build it. So, you know, it starts with, you know, the things that we absolutely can control, and that is, you know, making sure that we're leading in a way and making relationships that continue to drive economic growth in St. Charles, which also helps with the tax burden and everything else, you know, that a great regional city has.
All right. Thank you. Carolyn, we'll start with you on this one. Traffic and pedestrian safety have been topics of concern in St. Charles, especially along Route 31 in your ward. Is that something you plan to address? And if so, what would that look like?
Sure. I think that pedestrian safety is something that we've been talking about in Third Ward for a while. I know we've addressed it here actually on Main Street as well. On the west side, I think we need to make sure that the sidewalks are available. On 31, there's a stretch that the sidewalks are not available also. There's a tiny stretch here on Main Street as well. So to make sure that that's in the city's budget, I think pedestrian safety has to be foremost. So we need to make sure that there's sidewalks on both sides of the street, going up and connecting to sidewalks where they're available. So I understand that the ones here on the west side are going to be done this summer. I don't know the schedule for the ones on 31, but I would think that needs to be a priority in this ward for the aldermen that get elected. As for walkability in general in the city, we've talked about making sure that there's congruency with the lights and congruency with the paths with signage. And so I think there needs to be more communication on the pathways to make sure, and lights, that they're all timed in the right way for safety. And then more foot patrol downtown at night is something we talked about also in our different forums. So there has to be some kind of safety measures. The other thing I would just say, as a regular citizen witnessing this, I saw a truck get stuck again on the 31 turn. I don't know what we can do about that. I mean, I know they're both clearly Illinois highways, but that's not helping. So if you have people that are walking on that corner and they're around that corner when that truck is trying to take that turn, you're going to have a problem. So I'd like to see us investigate what we can do in talking with the state on that as a city council. So Paul, I'm sure Paul has insight on that.
And Paul, you're up. Is traffic and pedestrian safety something you plan to address? And if so, what would that look like?
Already addressing it. Walkability in our city has to be addressed, and that is, safe crossings. We have, and especially in the third ward, we have this, spread out ward. And from the west side of the ward, it's right now, you can't walk down into, you can't walk to the post office. We're not connected. I sat down with the city administrator and worked on making sure that be in the budget, and the connection is being budgeted and will be done next year. But it's just a start. I mean, you take a look at walkability over on the west side by Kirk and Kirk and 64. There was a little bit of conflict with the county. I mean, the easiest thing, you can connect the city and make it walkable. All it takes is, way more money than we have. So we have to make it a priority and do it in a measured way and find our opportunities, because we got this great city, but, as we've developed, like a lot of the development, let me start over, a lot of the development that you see in other communities around St. Charles, like Wasco, and kind of satellites of St. Charles, it's come because St. Charles is such a great city. So we've pushed west, and we've grown, by little pockets of development. We need to pay attention to, better bikeability. Like from Wild Rose, it's really, really hard to bike your way around our city. And we need to be looking at, alternate transportation. You take a look at parking. We're at the beginning. We don't have parking issues right now, but we could make it easier and better. And there are way more people who are looking for more of an urban lifestyle in St. Charles. So they need to be able to ride their bikes. That safety, and if we're going to have first e-bikes, which we've started to handle, how do e-bikes operate within all traffic scenarios, and we're doing a better job of addressing that. How does that blend with bikes? And we've tried to extend bike paths, but right now, like with the Great Western Trail and some of the things that you have to do with the railroads to try and get access to some of the land to make what are easier connections and the things that make the most sense, those are really difficult conversations, because the railroads are very hard to deal with, and we're working really diligently. And when we hit obstacles, we just have to continue to work harder, make it a higher priority, which you've seen in the last 4 years. We absolutely have, but we got our bike ped program, which has addressed that. You've seen the share lane signs all over the place to make people aware. But I mean, even understanding with e-bikes, they go at a different speed. It doesn't operate the same way a pedal bike is operating. We just have to keep that as a priority, as the entire world and country is learning how to deal with those things, that we don't lag behind, where, at different times in St. Charles, we have a history of being a small town. And we've been behind. Like 30 years ago, our downtown was a ghost town. We had a gravel parking lot 3 blocks off of city center. We've developed in the right way. We're doing great things to, bring great life to the people who live here, but we need to make sure that we don't that we keep up, that we don't take a small town approach, and make sure that we keep working on, the safety concerns, that we're at the front of the pack, on making sure that we're an easy place to get around and safe, and continue to lead our residents in understanding what are their duties and what is expected of all of us, what we expect of each other, just to make this, an easy and safe place to travel around.
Thank you. And Vicki, same question.
So Route 31 is a state route. So we on the city council would not have immediate purview over putting sidewalks alongside Route 31. Having said that, I live near Route 31 in the subdivision right across the street from St. Charles North High School. And all the time I see those kids walking along 31 and it scares the heck out of me. So I would love to see sidewalks put in there, but we would have to, I think, work with our state representatives and petition them to work with IDOT and try and prioritize. I would love to widen those lanes to allow room, or widen the 31 to allow room for sidewalks, especially for the high school kids who walk all the time along the median, very dangerously, I think, there. And there is, separately beyond just Route 31, there is a pedestrian and bike plan that the city has created that I would love to support in the coming years. Walkability and bikeability are one of my top 3 platforms in my agenda. So, I think there's going to be some significant belt tightening in the coming years. We touched on that a little bit during this conversation. There's some big infrastructure projects. There's an $80 million debt right now. So I'm glad we're prioritizing finances because it's a significant issue in the city, and it's going to really constrain the priorities that we can focus on to continue to grow St. Charles. But I would love to see bikeability and walkability be among those priorities that we continue to fund at least a few key high value projects, because I think they will make the biggest difference in the quality of life for residents. Projects like that at a relatively affordable rate compared to some of the other discretionary projects being considered.
Thank you. So some of you have touched on this already, but several candidates have stressed the importance of bringing affordable and diverse housing stock into St. Charles. I know some of you touched on this, but is Ward 3 a good location for adding affordable and mixed housing stock? And how would you encourage developers to bring that to your ward? Oh, this one starts with you, Paul. Sorry.
Okay. You have to find the right developers. I mean, we have millions of dollars in our because all of the developers who come in and work, there is a choice between building the affordable units, but then once you build it, you have to manage it, because it's not just build it and it's, you build it smaller and all the rest. No, it's a controlled price situation with deed restrictions or rent restrictions, and it requires management. And most of the developers aren't built to handle that. We've done a lot of work. I have had conversations with a ton of developers to try and understand how come we're not getting this built. It's you can ask for it, but you have to find the right developers to do it. And we've talked to developers. We've asked for, I sat on the housing commission for a while, and it's just, it has to be profitable for those developers. And then those people that are doing it, they have to apply at the county, state, and different levels to get access to funds from them too. It's just a challenge. So we're just continuing to look at until we find developers who can develop it. I think the third ward has plenty of great locations for affordable housing. I think we absolutely have to have diverse housing stock. As somebody who's employed a lot of people in St. Charles in both professional and entry level roles, our workforce could be more robust for those jobs. A lot of people don't realize that. We have 90%, 98% occupancy in our manufacturing district. We cannot supply all of the labor for those positions. It's one of the reasons why we do have great access to young professionals, but we could have a greater segment of young professional positions and companies that hire those in St. Charles. But as you see more people moving into the community who are looking for that housing, it gets easier and easier, but it's just a challenge because it's it's government programming to create that affordable housing. But that being said, also understand, we talk about affordable housing, we aren't even close. St. Charles isn't at the limits. We do not have like any state requirements or even oversight, because we meet all of the affordable housing, guidelines and requirements and requests that the state have. It's not a huge problem. It's just one of those, it's kind of a little bit of a dog whistle. It's we have life is hard. It is hard when you're looking for affordable housing, but we're reasonably well above what the state's looking for us to provide in affordable housing. It's not the most burning need. It's just something where your heart pours out when you find somebody who's looking for it and they can't. But we also have great services to help those people in transition. This is one of the most caring and terrific communities you're ever going to find. The amount of people who contribute their time to helping people who need it, it's absolutely terrific.
Thank you, Paul. Vicki, same question.
Yeah, as mentioned, attainable, affordable housing is definitely an issue for me. I mentioned my children who are having trouble leaving the nest because of the lack thereof in the immediate area. There's a parcel of land behind Woodward in the 3rd Ward that I think could be a great place for some additional multifamily or affordable housing. We talked about the mall, that's a little bit outside of the 3rd Ward, but that's another location, and they definitely exist. I talked before about closing loopholes for developers so that they aren't able to buy out of providing affordable housing when new development comes in. I think that would be a good strategy. But I think also Paul is right when he says find the right developers, because some developers just don't do attainable housing and some do. And so maybe focusing on those developers who have that capability and interest would also be helpful. In addition, there are first-time homeowner grants available in St. Charles, and I don't think very many people know about that. And with my communication background, I would love to help market. A lot of times the solution isn't spending more and adding more services to the city, but helping people understand what we have. And those grants could also help bring new homeowners into the 3rd Ward. Let's see. I think, in terms of diversity, very much agree. We're not a very diverse community at all. And I'm not sure that 100% of the community wishes that we were, but I strongly believe that we're going to be a healthier and more dynamic community when we're more diverse. So we can encourage bringing in different types of people into the community, and we'll be stronger for it through our marketing materials, through who we feature on city materials and on developer materials, through reaching out to different groups and different other communities around the Chicagoland area. We can hopefully strengthen that over time.
Thank you. And Carolyn?
Yeah, it's very interesting to hear everyone speak. I think I have a little bit more insight to some of the specifics just from my experience of sitting on different committees at the state level and at the city level with the Housing Commission. So the Housing Commission itself, as Paul alluded to, we require developers to either produce more affordable housing or donate a percentage of what their development is equitable to the Housing Commission trust now, which we created a trust, which will eventually go to more affordable housing. One of the developers that was very successful in doing that was in the 5th Ward. So Shodine created his in Prairie. Paul, what's the name? Do you know? Prairie Center, I think.
Off the top of my, yeah.
It's where the old St. Charles
depends on
Mall
if you're talking about the building or the entire thing.
Yeah, the center. I think it's Prairie Center. It's off 38. So they, Shodine produced all those multi-unit housing, and he specifically allocated the affordable housing for 55 and up, which was an entire unit he allocated. So we actually did the ceremony of the digging for that. What was interesting about that though is there are spots still in the 3rd Ward. So there's some land parcel off of 7th Street, kind of behind and 5th there behind the church. And so you could get a developer to develop that, and we do require them to provide either affordable housing or the cash equivalent to the trust. So what's hard about that is then that trust is in the city's hands to find a developer to either produce housing that's affordable, or we have to buy a house and flip it into affordable housing. So that puts the city government into real estate, which is not, I think, a forte of the city government. So that might be something that I would like to see change, is either turn the trust over to a developer or require, as Vicki said, require our developers to, instead of buyout, require them to develop the actual housing units. The other thing I wanted to touch on is that we actually are pretty diverse in the sense of community percentages. So when I was in the district in D303, our students at East and in our whole district were about 15 to 17% Latino in St. Charles. So we do have a diversity of population. I'm not sure that we are highlighting or communicating to our diverse percentages of population across the St. Charles city limits. So with the district, of course, you're going outside of city limits, but most of our diversity is inside the boundaries of the city limits in the 3rd and 5th wards. So I would like to see more communication from the aldermen and from city council in particular to our minorities in town, and find out if they have a different specialized set of needs that we are not taking care of. So I think that's something that needs to be addressed.
Okay. Thank you. I want to take a second. We're running a little bit over the scheduled time. I want to make sure everybody's good to continue. We've only got a couple more questions, but I know you all have other commitments. This is not your sole focus today, unless it is, which is great, but you're all very busy. So if everybody's okay to keep going?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Vicki, we'll start with you on this one. Do you feel the city has been fiscally responsible over the past 4 years? And if not, how could it be improved?
The city's finances are stable and they're not terrible, but they definitely can be improved. I mentioned that the city carries an $80 million debt right now, and that is reduced in the last few years, but that is dramatically out of proportion for a city of our size and our overall budget, and it is a huge priority to pay down that debt, which will allow us to have the lowest possible interest loans and be less at risk. So I think that is a concern about how we got here. That is a really high debt for a community of our size. In addition, we have massive infrastructure projects, and that they've been postponed. There was the previous city council voted down a rate increase that would have helped pay for that, and so that has to be paid for somehow, and that's going to cost 80 is the number 80. Yeah, 80 is the number again, or $79 million to put in, to replace the lead pipelines. There's a new sewer trunk line that needs to be put in on the east side, especially to encourage development there at the mall. That's going to cost $39 million. These are gigantic expenses. Now they can be phased over time. And I think we should try to renegotiate some of those unfunded mandates with the state of Illinois. I haven't heard us talking about that. Hopefully we are going to give ourselves as much time as we can to put in some of those huge projects, but there's going to need to be some, as I believe I mentioned earlier, some significant belt tightening in St. Charles in order to get those projects done and pay down the debt and continue to fund really high value, affordable projects like perhaps connecting bike paths or putting in safer pedestrian crossings that we still really want to do. So we're going to have to get creative about our finances. We're going to have to make strategic cuts. Just for one example, there's been a proposal to remodel city council chambers. We should not do that. There's other places we can find funds to cut. We need to continue to spur economic development through getting those properties that we talked about built, through continuing to support the Business Alliance, which is doing a great job, and we can probably continue to help them more, increasing local tourism. And we need to figure out how we can get our maximum loans and grants from the state and federal government to get all these things done. We have some serious work to do in the finance department in the coming years.
Thank you. Carolyn, same question. Do you feel the city has been fiscally responsible the past 4 years, and how could it be improved?
First of all, Kevin, I give you credit for saying that loaded question with a straight face. So it's a tough question. And it's funny, you try to think of unique things to say as we do all these different interviews. But so I have been critical of the city for their spending on the aesthetics, especially on the corner of First Street. While I do think it brings a centralized gathering place for the city, I think the spending on it was more than I would say that a lot of the citizens were comfortable with for the budget. I think so. I think we would need to cut back on any aesthetic spending that we're doing for the city. I think that could be done a bit smarter. I think any budget of this size, because we've worked with a budget this size. I've worked with a budget this size for 6 years when I was with the school board, is you need to do an internal audit on what's going on with the spending. So when you're looking at budget cuts and of course, a federal freeze on grants, you have to look at what do you need to do to, to minimize spending. So I think there has to be a serious audit involving the entire council, not just 1 or 2 members or just the mayor. So I think you need to sit down and do an analysis of the budget or a budget scrub with your financial people, with your council in a meeting and talk about what is it that you need to kind of reduce spending on. Then after you do that, then that's when you talk about what do you need to do about taxes or maybe reduce some of the TIFs or whatever you have going on there. I definitely think there has to be an increase in commercial taxes, not increase, but an increase in receiving commercial sales tax, which means you have to increase businesses. Let's try to get some of our businesses back on the east side. We've talked about that before. Take some of that burden of the taxpayer credit resources from your resident taxpayers and put it back on the commercial end. But I think the first and foremost is going to be an audit. So I think that's what's really the most important. So I do appreciate that they've reduced their debt. That's always important. But I think there's a lot more to come.
Thank you. And Paul, same question.
We've been more responsible than the city of St. Charles has been in a long time. And I've been a big driver of that, sitting down and meeting with the finance directors that we've had. I've been pushing since the very beginning to find a way to create a finance committee. We talked about moving to a committee of the whole, but I'm putting my foot down. We have to have at minimum quarterly finance meetings. There have been some talk. The financial literacy on our city council has never been where it needs to be, and it needs to continue to grow. We need to be talking about our finance issues way more frequently. Some people who are currently on city council don't quite have an understanding of what's going on. There's conversations we reorganizing when we're talking about the budget and the rest of it. That has to do with, we're a government. We have, mid-year year ends as any government does. And budget is not dictated. It's by us. It's dictated by the county. But those are not really relevant to the conversation. The conversation is we should have at minimum quarterly finance committee meetings because we have to increase our financial literacy. I've been beating the drum so hard on we need to be very conscious of what we're spending money on in operating the city. We have growing pension obligations, which everybody in the state of Illinois knows about. We've addressed those. We had roads that should have been on a 35-year replacement cycle that were on a 55-year replacement cycle. I was a big supporter of a half% increase or a 0.5% increase in sales tax. And it was said we didn't take as big a tax increase as we could, but we didn't vote down any tax increases. We voted for a tax increase that considered growth in EAV in the city of St. Charles. And that's one a lot of people had a hard time understanding. But that just speaks to we need increased financial literacy, which is talking about these issues more often, talking about them in public, which wasn't the case. Before I got on city council, we had 10 years where we borrowed $1 million a year to run our city council and nobody was paying attention. I sat down and did so much work with the finance department to figure it out, bringing other aldermen with me to just work on that very thing. And as far as an audit, we need to be having these discussions in city council, but we get an audit every year. Other than hiring people to, if you think you need an audit, you actually need, different director of finance, because that is their job to run it and bring that forward. But we just got a phenomenal director of finance. It's only been, he hasn't even been here for a full 4 years. I think it's under 3. He's doing a great job and we're moving as quick as possible. You have to understand our entire administration is new and they've been excited about being a part of St. Charles. And we've all been working together to make sure that I mean, we've reduced our debt. We have reduced our outstanding pension obligations, found extra money while, fully refunding our asset replacement funds. We have also, paid down a ton of our debt, and some of the things that create, because we're not extraordinarily outsized, we have more debt than is desirable. I know, but it's very much manageable. But that all came because we TIFFed downtown, which we should have done because we need to be a net importer of tax dollars, which means you have to be a great place to do business. You have to be a place that recruits people to spend their dollars in St. Charles, which takes finishing your downtown. You can't have a downtown that's under construction, a plan that isn't finished. And besides that, for the first street, we raised close to $1 million of private funds to build that. It would have been a betrayal of public trust not to pull that project across the finish line. And it is part of what makes St. Charles a desirable place to bring a business, to come and spend your dollars, and thereby contributing to our local economy. So I think we've done the best job possible. You also want to be careful. I mean, we're an old city. You don't want this generation of St. Charles resident to pay for the things that weren't done correctly for the last 30 years. And you don't want to pay for all the benefit that we're going to get for the next 30 years. It takes a measured approach, which is 1 year, 3 year, and 10-year planning programs. But when it comes to pensions, we're in the same boat as every other city in St. Charles. It's one of those things, stay in the middle of the pack. Don't those who scatter away, those are the ones that get picked off by the wolves. And that's a thing that people have to understand. There are smart people all over Illinois that are dealing with problems. A fair amount of these problems are not unique to us. And you have to be, there's a difference between, blazing a trail. What early bird gets the worm, second mouse gets the cheese. You have to be smart and know what you should be early on and what you kind of have to grind and wait for opportunities, and then coming up with creative solutions. Like I was just sitting with our director of development, and I literally provided a very creative solution to help find a funding source for, one of those major projects that we weren't thinking about, and I mean, you just need smart people who like working for the city of St. Charles, who feel like they're partners with, I mean, we're the board of directors. We're not full-time employees. When you hear aldermen that are making a lot of promises, just understand, policy, show up at meetings and support staff as they do their job. Part of that is support them, find great staff to come and do it. We have incredibly talented people that are working on these problems, and right now they feel incredibly well supported. That needs to continue. As we find these solutions, and I think that the work that we've done and the sea change you've seen in how we think about finance in the city of St. Charles over the last 4 years kind of speaks to exactly what we've been doing. It's been great, and I very much have played, beat that drum, been incredibly loud about it to help make those changes and supported, the hiring and then the function of the staff that have been making those changes. So yeah, we've done a good job, and we need to keep on the track we're on.
All right. Thank you very much.
In an effort of time, we're gonna do one last question here. Kevin, would you rather I pick the last one or the one that I was originally supposed to ask?
We can do the last one.
All right. We're gonna end on something really hard hitting, and we're gonna start with you, Carolyn. When you're going downtown, what's your favorite restaurant and favorite thing to order? And where is your secret parking spot?
Unmute, Carolyn.
Unmuted. Keeping it a secret.
Sorry, I was just saying those things aren't totally congruent. I guess when I go downtown, my favorite spot to run into is probably the office. Plus, I also know the owner there, so he's a great guy, Mike Carney. But I go there, and my go-to, because I don't really make them at home, is probably a burger. So I like their burgers there. They're delicious with their onion rings. I mean, you can't lose with that. But my secret parking spot is probably on the other side of town when I'm doing stuff over there. God, I'm afraid to say it. Is the spot behind the Shell station, the parking lot behind the Shell station. Shh. But I use that spot to go to the bakery, or if I'm running into Shaku, to take some takeout home. So that's because sushi's on the plate too, once in a while.
Excellent. Paul, same to you. Favorite restaurant and what do you order there? And then do you have a secret parking spot for
The
downtown?
secret parking spot is go to the 5th floor of the parking deck. We have 140 spaces up there and nobody is parking there. Everybody who thinks we have a parking problem is because we are not using 140 spaces the right way. In the city, they know, just go all the way to the top. The elevator is right there. Top floor of the parking deck. It's amazing up there. Terrific parking spots. I love all of our restaurants. Shaku is absolutely amazing. The sushi is great. The best burger by far, and this is near and dear to my heart, is at Duke's. The office has amazing wood fire pizzas. The pasta, the angel hair pasta with absolutely terrific Italian sausage is down at Zaza's. So many great. Oh, Graceful Ordinary. Like, Chris, what are you doing? Like, just tell me what's great right now, because he's switching up his menu. His chefs are amazing. The level of talent and how lucky we are to have a white tablecloth restaurant like that in town is awesome. There's so many great. I'm being a jerk to somebody right now.
Save some for Vicki, Paul.
Yeah, go ahead.
No
All of
restaurants
them. Love
left.
it. Go to the 5th floor of the parking deck.
Thank you. One of my favorite dishes is at McNally's Pub downtown. It's a boxty, which is a unique Irish dish. It's kind of a savory crepe, and it's not on the menu, but they'll make you a vegetarian one if you want, filled with vegetables. So it turns what otherwise seems like an indulgence into something that's a little bit good for you. And there is almost always parking available under the brunch cafe.
Excellent.
All right. I think everybody, we've been at this for a while, so people need to leave. So I want to thank you all for your time and your answers. It's been a great discussion, and look for this online.
Thank you so much for doing this.
Yep. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, guys.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody.
All right. Have a
Good
great
day.
day,
We
everyone.
did it. Last
Thank
one.
you. That's
Bye.
fun.
See you guys.
See you out there, guys.
See ya.
Bye.
See ya.